but psychologically, he's indebted to me. And I know at first, I used to feel like it was very Machiavellic, but I raised like 300K from friends and family. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just the reality. They seem to be building wealth. They seem to be succeeding in entrepreneurship in Africa. Why is it that we're not doing the same? Full transparency, like I built my first startup in Congo years ago with Dr. Mukwege. All right, welcome to the Nohemie and Co podcast. So, something that I've been thinking a lot about lately. Indians in Africa, and before that it was Lebanese, these guys seem to be building generational wealth in the African continent, and I can confidently say this from my experience in Congo. I now live in Kenya. I hear the same thing from my Nigerian friends. I've seen it in Senegal. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just the reality. They seem to be building wealth. They seem to be succeeding in entrepreneurship in Africa. Why is it that we're not doing the same? Again, welcome to the Nohemie and Co podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, grab a seat. So, this is a segment of my podcast called the Diaspora Playbook. I know. So now Nohemie and Co, sorry, is my main podcast. And this one is really me interviewing entrepreneurs in the African ecosystem, specifically those that are interested in getting into the DRC or are already doing business in the DRC. And then we have the second piece, which is business in Congo, where I share my personal experiences that I've encountered doing business in the DRC, which is not for the week. And so this third segment of my podcast is the Diaspora Playbook. It just makes sense. I'm originally from Congo. Allow me to reintroduce myself up in here. Originally from the DRC, born there, raised in Canada, lived in California, lived in Europe. Now I'm back to the African continent. Last 4 years I was living in Kinshasa, and now I'm living in Kenya and still going to the DRC. So technically, quote unquote, I'm considered a diaspora. So I feel like I'm really well positioned to share with you guys business tips and tricks based on what I'm observing, based on what I'm doing. But I'm also able to have a Western lens because that's really where I spend most of my life. So let's just get started. Anyways, so today I want to talk about a topic that you guys, this topic, I've been thinking about this for the longest time ever. I'm like, why is it that Indian people and Lebanese people, they seem to be doing well in Africa in ways that us fellow Black Africans, we just struggle, okay? Like, struggle. In the DRC, people don't talk about this enough. In Congo, a lot of billionaires, yeah, it's a cash economy. These people don't want to be traced, are actually Indians. Now, in Kenya, it's very interesting. Kenya has over 40 tribes, and one of them is Indian, actually. It's an Indian tribe. I think, this is my little analogy, I think what happens with a lot of Indians, they look back in history where I think was it Uganda or Zimbabwe? Like, there was a country where an African leader had kicked out Indians at one point. They're like, you're building your wealth collectively, not including our people. Get the F out. I think that trauma has led to many Indians going to places like Congo, South Africa. And what happened is a lot of them got smart with Kenya. They're like, yeah, let's register ourselves as a tribe legally. Let's open banks. That way, if ever a leader was to try to kick us out, we can't because we have roots now. That's my little theory. But what I think they do really well, there's so many things that they've done well that I think as Black Africans we can learn. I think the number one thing that I find very fascinating with a lot of Indians, you look at a lot of Indian communities throughout the world, they always go for essential, boring businesses. I will die on a hill for this topic. If you watch me on my shorts, if you watch me on TikTok, I talk about this all the time. I said the African economy is an emerging economy. What we need are boring, essential businesses. What are boring, essential businesses? These are businesses that are not trendy. These are businesses that you need for survival. These are businesses that literally go by the basic of business, which is supply and demand. Whenever there's a constraint of supply and the high demand, it's the winning formula. And I really think that this is where they do well. I think another thing that they do extremely well is collective resources. Like, so this is a very interesting topic actually, because what it is with collective resource. So resource, whenever you think resource, you always think in terms of money, or you think of raw material like the DRC with cobalt. But really, in this case, I think what Indian community have done well, and Lebanese have the same playbook. they kind of treated their business like the mafia. So what do I mean by that? So I'm Noemi. I want to open up a petrol station. I do the math. I figure it's going to cost me $100,000 to from land acquisition to actually getting the license from Shell and then the distribution of the actual oil, gas that goes into people's cars. The total is going to cost me 100K. I don't have that money. I have maybe 10, 20K that I can take from the bank. But what I do is, okay, I call 10 family members. You're a lawyer, you're going to work for free in exchange for a percentage of every sale in the company in order to handle all our legal paperwork. That land that you own outside that's not making you any money, sell it, give me 50K in exchange for X percentage. But like they pull everybody from the capital to the dedication to the sweat equity, which is pretty much labor, time, and intellectual property all together, and that's how you build this petrol station, and I take the lead on executing this. And I think another part of collecting resource that we don't talk about enough is this idea of moral debt. I think Indians are very good at this. So how does it work? I'm Noemi. I'm gonna hire you, Xavier, because you're my cousin on my mom's side, and my grandpa, my mom's mom, who is also the parent of your aunt, of your mom, sorry, because our parents are sisters. He had paid the tuition for your dad, his son-in-law, years ago. So now your whole family is indebted to us, especially to my grandpa. You're not gonna f up this job because psychologically you owe me because of my grandfather, and there's that level of respect, and you're indebted to me. So it's very psychological, but it works. In Congo, I did the same thing. I have a logistics company in Bandundu, which is outside of Kinshasa, and you guys, that's literally how I'm living right now. We're not making a lot of money, but we're very profitable, might I say. And who is the one managing the truck is my cousin. He's like a third cousin who is the nephew of my grandma on my dad's side. My grandma took care of his mom. My dad paid for the medical bill of his daughter who has epilepsy, all these things. So Jacques, that's his full name, is indebted to me. And so what happened is when we do the treks in Bandundu, which is in the village, literally Jacques is the one that takes the cash from the sales, walks to the bank, drops it off every Friday on the dot. At 9 a.m., I get a notification from the bank that money is in the account. Why? And I pay him very well regularly, but psychologically, he's indebted to me. And I know at first I used to feel like it was very Machiavellic, but I realized this is how you do business. It's a trust system. That's what collective resource and economy is, a trust system. And this is something that we also need to learn and implement because that's the only way to work, especially in informal economies like the African continent where there's a lot of red tape, a lot of corruption. You gotta go by trust, by who you work and who you make money with. And another thing that they do well, you guys, I'm obsessed with this conversation, so I'm going to talk about it a lot. They go for essential businesses. I'm going to repeat this because I feel like the people in the back, they need to hear me out. Essential businesses are businesses that you need day to day. So that could be pharmaceutical. If you notice, a lot of times Indians, and this I've been seeing in the US as well, but in Africa, a lot of times they own the pharmaceutical distribution chain, which is point number two. They own the distribution. What does that mean? So whenever you have a product, usually products makes more sense than service based. Whenever you have a product, so let's go with the example of pharmaceutical. It's just the drug that, in my case, for example, I have ADHD and I have insomnia. So I take medication for those two things. I'm the end user and payer of this medication. And let me tell you, insomnia and ADHD are not commonly diagnosed conditions in the African continent. So those drugs are actually 100 times more expensive. Whereas a drug like, say, in a place like Congo where there's a lot of malaria medication is cheaper now. So what happens with pharmaceutical, it's a very interesting model. You see a lot of clinics or pharmaceutical shops or pharmacies, sorry, are owned by Indians. The black person is the one working as a pharmacist on a salary dispensing the drug, but you look at the paperwork, it's owned most of the time in Africa, at least by Indians, especially East Africa and South Africa, and now Central Africa region, like the DRC. So then you go a level a bit above. You're like, okay, who makes the drug? Because, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest money maker in drugs is research and development, R&D, the molecules. That's where the money is. And the pharmaceutical industry is so bureaucratic, so complex in terms of patent drugs, generic drug. Like my mind just explodes when I think about that industry. So what I've seen a lot of Indians do is the drug itself is made in India in a large scale factory where there's cheap labor. They then immigrate to African countries where they own the pharmaceutical distribution. So I'm a shareholder, so I own equity in a pharmaceutical distribution producer in India. My logistics company, my boat, takes that drug in huge amount, brings it to Congo, brings it to Kenya, brings it to South Africa. Then in South Africa, I own the wholesaler who sells these drugs at a cheap cost to other pharmacies that I then own. So from the moment the drug is made in an Indian factory to the moment the consumer buys it, you own every single step of the distribution. They do the same thing with staple foods, rice, corn, you name it. Wherever in an African country it's not produced to meet the demand, they import. Again, they buy from neighboring countries. In those neighboring countries where there's less laws and more, less laws but more contained, more restricted, they can control a bit the legal system. They own the producer of the corn there, bring it into the country, or in the case of DRC, one of the largest producers of corn is Katumbi. He's like an old politician. His only competition are Indian producers, and altogether they're not even meeting 5% of the demand. But guess what happens? They own the distribution from the production to the truck that delivers it to stores to the consumer. And ladies and gentlemen, like there's so many examples. Gas stations, they own most of the gas stations, and gas station, the moneymaker, the oil. Like I can't even begin to tell you the amount of businesses. Like even another big one is literally construction. So construction, you look at Kenya. I live in downtown Nairobi. You guys, I kid you not, every morning at 7 a.m. you hear like construction material loudly. You look at the rooftop. It's the Kenyans that are hammering. It's the Chinese that are supervising, and then you kind of figure out who owns the material that the Chinese are buying to build these buildings. It's Indian cement store. Mombasa, full of cement stores next to the port, mostly Indian owned. Construction material in Kinshasa, mostly you see the Indians every day at 5 a.m. at the cashier. They're there. They own it. So what happens is these are essential businesses because guess what? Africa as a continent, it's an emerging market. What does that mean? We are a construction site. We need to build this continent. You need the material, and that material has to come from somewhere. It's insane how brilliant this is. And why this is very brilliant, it's that these are businesses that are set up for scale. And this is my other point. So I think I don't even know what point I'm at this point, point number 3 or 4. Point number 3, these businesses, the beautiful thing about essential businesses, they are made for scale. And this is what Africa has. Because if you really think about the African continent, especially sub-Saharan Africa, like our purchase power, so this is the amount of money the average individual has to buy things, is very low. Like I know some of us love to be flashy, like to look cute, but you look at a population like DRC, over 100 million, how many of those people even make $1,000 a month consistently? Very few. What does that tell you? The average person ability to buy something is very low. So where do you win? You win in businesses that scale. How do I produce things at the lowest amount of cost possible and sell it as cheap as I can, but at the mass level in order to make a lot of money? And this is point number 4 as to why the Indian playbook, which the Lebanese have done the same, is so brilliant for Africa. This is a long-term play. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get a lot of slack for this. Please don't hate on me. But as people, I think one, black people were too harsh on ourselves. Even myself, I'm guilty of this. Like we're very critical of ourselves. We are one of the only race that feel the need to go online and trash each other. Meanwhile, other ethnicities, they may hate each other, but they keep it within the community. We don't do that. So I just want to preface that I don't think blacks were lazy. I don't believe in that paradigm. What I do think though is that a lot of other cultures like Indians, Lebanese, and now Chinese, they have a long-term vision. They focus on businesses that generate immediate cash flow. So this is a business that's very transactional. I own the cement factory, you own a construction company. I'm selling you cement and you're paying me for it. Very simple, very straightforward. But the thing is that these businesses, as they scale, what ends up happening is this: you need to play the long term game. Whenever you're someone that's in the business of scale, you play by volume, which is what Africa has. Our purchase power is low. So, what do we have? Population size, volume. So, you got to go by scale. And so, what happens when you do that, you think more long term, not so get rich quick scheme in the now, but your business model is very cash transient. And I really think this is the one thing I really think when I look at the Indian culture, it's a long term play. And what happens when you do the long term play, especially when you control the distribution, over time you have a monopoly. What happens is, ladies and gentlemen, I can confidently tell you, in order to build a business at scale, you need trust from buyers, you need trust from consumers. Once you have that trust, it is so hard to build trust. Once you have it, it is so hard for anyone to come in and beat you to it. It is so hard for competition to come in. And what I've seen in Congo, I see this a lot in Kenya, a lot of Indians and a lot of Lebanese, they just have a monopoly. They dominate in some sectors, and the likelihood of you and I coming in and competing with them is so hard because they've controlled the supply chain, they've controlled the distribution for years. And because they play the long term game, they set up their businesses for generational wealth. If you notice a lot of Indian cultures, what you will see is the son who is 15 years old, going to high school, after school, once he plays soccer for an hour, he's at the factory working with his dad. By the time his dad has like a heart attack like 5 times at the age of 70, the son is now past 25, MBA graduate from a top school in the West, comes back to Africa. Actually, I don't even say it's in the West. A lot of Indian Africans don't even leave Africa. They get their education here, South Africa and so forth. They learn the business and now they're CEOs and running the family business. So you literally are building it for generational wealth. And the likelihood of someone coming in, beating you to it, competing with you is so hard that you've kind of guaranteed your success in wealth. And I've noticed with a lot of Indians after that, they just diversify, but they're always in the same sector. The core of their wealth is essential businesses that scale. It's about leveraging relationships and networks. And then you go for the flashy fun businesses. Because let's be honest, the fun businesses is really what you sell to affluent blacks. It's really what you sell to attract investors, but your core business is essential, boring businesses set up for scale. So I hope this helps. It's a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I'm constantly studying this. And even myself, I've really shifted my model. Like, I kid you not, you guys, full transparency. Like, I built my first startup in Congo years ago with Dr. Mukwege. Shout out to Dr. Mukwege, incredible man. Got my seed fund, 100K from Grand Challenges. You guys, like, the business totally flopped because Dr. Mukwege looked at me at the end of the fund. He was like, "Why would I pay you for an electronic health record system when I have like the World Bank, IMF giving us donation for this kind of stuff?" So that's when I realized, no, no one needs this business. Fast forward 10 years later, I'm back in DRC 3 years ago. You'd think I would learn my lesson. I literally built a following on this thing called Kinspot, the app meant to like for you to book restaurants, spa reservations, because I just noticed there's so many restaurants, so many spas opening in Kinshasa. Why not do like a booking platform? You guys, I raised like 300K from friends and family, burned through the cash because I was hiring a developer in Eastern Europe and all these jazz. Nobody wanted to pay for this. I ended up selling it for $5,000. And what I really sold was the following that I had on each platform. So now the new buyer is going to be using it as an advertising tourism platform, not necessarily a booking one. So literally, you raise 300,000 cash USD, no, not cash, sorry, loan, because I did friends and family, only to sell for $5,000. Like, major flop. But this just tells me that, like, I love technology, I love innovation, but I don't know if this continent needs another app. Like, this continent needs roads. So I hope this helps. I'm always thinking about these things, and yeah, make sure to subscribe and let me know if you have any comments or suggestions below.